Hello, boys and girls. It's time for another story from Taylor's Bible Storybook. Today we're going to read story number 22. Joseph meets his brothers. So Pharaoh didn't send Joseph back to jail anymore, but made a great man of him instead. The king took off his own ring and put it on Joseph's finger, and dressed him in beautiful clothing and put a gold chain around his neck. He gave him a chariot to ride in with soldiers running along ahead of him shouting, "Bow down!" And all the people bowed low before him wherever he went. He was in charge of all the land of Egypt and was almost as great as a king. Everyone had to do whatever Joseph told him to do. During the first 7 years, when all the farms had such good crops, he went to all the farmers and he made them give some of their corn to Pharaoh. Joseph took this grain and stored it in the nearby cities, keeping it safe until the 7 years of famine came. Soon he had so much grain stored away that he stopped counting it. Then the 7 years of good crops ended, and the 7 years of poor crops began. Soon everyone began to be hungry because there was so little to eat. When all their food was gone, the people came to Pharaoh and asked for something to eat. "Joseph is in charge," Pharaoh said. "Go to him and he will tell you what to do." Then Joseph opened up the buildings where the grain was kept, and he sold it to the people. Joseph's brothers were still living in the land of Canaan when the famine came. Soon their grain was gone, and they needed food for their father and their families. They looked at each other blankly, not knowing what to do. Then their father said to them, "Don't just stand there looking at each other. I hear there's grain in Egypt. Go and buy some for us so that we won't starve to death." So Joseph's 10 brothers got on their donkeys, and they rode for many days until they came to Egypt. Joseph's youngest brother Benjamin stayed with his father in Canaan, for his father was afraid to let him go. He was afraid that something might happen to him just as it had to Joseph. Since Joseph was the governor of Egypt, he was in charge of selling the grain to the people, but his brothers didn't recognize him in his Egyptian robes. They came and bowed low before him, never imagining that he was their brother. But Joseph knew them right away. Do you remember Joseph's dream that made his brothers angry? He had dreamed that his brothers' sheaves of grain bowed down to his sheaf, and that the sun and the moon and the 11 stars bowed down to him. And now it had come true. Here were his brothers bowing to him now. Imagine Joseph's surprise and joy to see his brothers again, even though they had been so cruel to him. But he pretended he didn't know them at all. He spoke roughly to them and asked them, "Where are you from?" "From the land of Canaan," they said. "We have come to buy food." Then Joseph said, "No, you are spies that have come here to see what trouble we are in so that you can bring an army and attack us." "Oh, no, sir," his brothers answered. "We have come to buy food. We are all one man's sons. We are men who speak the truth. We are not spies." Joseph pretended he didn't believe them, and he said again that they were spies. They told Joseph more about themselves and why they had come. They had said one of their brothers was with their father in the land of Canaan far away, and that one was dead. Joseph still pretended not to believe them, and he would find out whether they were telling the truth or not. This was what he would do. He would send one of them back to Canaan to get their youngest brother that they had told him about and bring him to Egypt. All the others must stay until he returned. Then he put them in jail for 3 days. On the 3rd day he talked with them again. This time he said that only one of them must stay, and all the others could go home to take the food to their families. One must stay so that Joseph would be sure that the others would come back again and bring the youngest brother with them. When his brothers heard this, they were very sad. They said God was punishing them for their sin of selling their brother as a slave a long time ago. Reuben, the one who had intended to take Joseph out of the well and bring him back to his father, said this to the brothers. Didn't I tell you not to sin against the child? But you wouldn't listen to me. Joseph listened to them talking to each other. They didn't know he could speak the language and understand them, for he talked to them only in Egyptian, and a servant had told them in their own language what he was saying to them. But of course, Joseph understood every word that they said. When he realized how sorry that they were for what they had done to him, he had to go away and cry. Afterwards, he came back again, and he talked to them some more, but he still pretended that he thought they were spies. Then he took Simeon and tied him up while all the others watched, for Simeon was the one who chose to stay in Egypt while the others went home after Benjamin. Then Joseph told his servants to fill his brothers' sacks with grain, and to put into the tops of their sacks the money that they had paid for the grain. But he didn't tell his brothers that the money was there. Finally, their donkeys were loaded, and all except Simeon started back home to Canaan. Then that night when they stopped to eat, they opened a sack to get some food. There was the money right on top of the sack. They were frightened, for they didn't know how it got there. Tune in next time when we have another story and finish up talking about Joseph and his brothers. See you next time, boys and girls. Bye-bye.